I'm Lawrence Brownlee, and this is Living the Classical Life.
Lawrence, thank you so much for being here on Living the Classical Life. We're so happy to have you here.
Thank you. It's nice to be here with you.
So I actually heard you yesterday in Charlie Parker's Yardbird, an opera that was in fact written for you. How does inhabiting a role like this impact you personally and professionally?
Taking on the role of Charlie Parker for me was a tremendous honor. It was humbling. It was a great challenge for me as an artist, as a musician. Such an iconic figure, someone who is respected, of course, in the jazz world and the music world at large. Trying to inhabit a character, a complex person who lived a very tumultuous, difficult, challenging life. Of course, only 34 years old, he died. But we see now that, he died in 1955 and his music is still here. So taking that on was something, it was a great learning experience for me. Learning about his life, his struggles, his music, all the things that he accomplished. Of course, the people that he dealt with, the other musicians that lived in the same period as him, people like Dizzy Gillespie, of course, Miles Davis, John Coltrane, Max Roach, some of the iconic figures that are still, even in 2016, are still celebrated today. It was great from an artistic standpoint, just stretching my voice, my instrument, to try to be expressive in a different way than usual. Of course, many people who know me know that I am a bel canto singer, singing a lot of Rossini, Donizetti, and Bellini. Those are the main people that I sing, but singing something like this, trying to liken my voice to that of a jazz, instrumentalist, using the extremes of the voice. All of those things were rewarding, fun, and for me, I felt like a lot of personal growth as a musician and an artist.
These performers that you mentioned, these iconic performers, had to face such challenges in their time, and especially Charlie Parker's era. How far do you think that we've come as Americans since that time in which the opera was set?
A lot, of course. He was born in 1920 and lived through. He was in Kansas City, Missouri, born there. Lived in the South, dealing with obviously racism, poverty. He was the product of a broken home. His family. It was just he and his mom. His father was not around. So he had some struggles there, but also, of course, as a country, who he was not necessarily accepted. And so now in 2016, we've made advancements in everything, in every walk of life. And so I think the world has changed. Of course, there are underlying things always, systematic racism and things that are still here today. But of course, the fact that I, myself, and many of my other colleagues get a chance to perform and do everything in the world, we've come a long way. So that's nice that we've made tremendous strides forward.
You come from Youngstown, Ohio.
Yes.
How do you go from being a young man in Youngstown to having your voice even discovered and then making it to the world's stages?
I have to say that I'm incredibly fortunate. When I was in high school, even before high school, in elementary and junior high school, I had a very active, in my city, Youngstown, Ohio, there is a very active music department. So we had things for kids to get involved in. Now I know in a lot of schools, they're taking music out, they're taking other disciplines out that I think are incredibly important for the focus, for the development of the mind. So many benefits have been found when you make the parallels from education, just science, math, music. Having that discipline of music is important. So for me, getting the chance, I think at the fourth grade it was, that I began to play in the school band as a fourth grader. So my first instrument in school was the trumpet, but I also had the background in church playing the drums and a few other instruments. So going through elementary school and then the junior high school, having a very active music program into high school, I was a part of a show choir that got me involved into different styles of music. Well, that show choir at the age of 15, that was the first time I ever left the United States. So my mind, my world was opened up. I got a chance to go to Germany, in France. My first time, at 15 years old. So 15 years old, how did a guy from Youngstown, Ohio, become an opera singer? Is because at 15 years old, there was an explosion that happened, and my mind was open to the possibility that music could take me outside of the city limits. So that was the beginning, and from there, just traveling and with music. Music was the vehicle for all of my travels, and so that's where it all began.
When was the first time you actually heard an opera?
The first time I ever heard an opera, I was in it. When I arrived to undergrad, someone came up to me and they said, "You're Tamino," and I said, "What's a Tamino?" "You're Tamino." "What's a Tamino?" I didn't know what it was, but I had been cast in the opera, The Magic Flute. So before I ever saw one, I was in one.
So at what point did you feel that you could succeed in a life as an opera singer or as a singer in general, that this could work, that let's go ahead and do this?
I thought I was going to be a lawyer. So, as I said before, music seemed to be the way to get me out of class because I was involved in these show choirs and different things in high school, but it got me the opportunity to travel and see other things. It was something that was useful for me, but I wasn't sure that it would be my profession. Of course, I was along for the ride. So going to these various countries, and we got a chance to perform in Disney World, and this was a way to get me to see things, but I thought I was going to pursue law. As an undergrad, taking music classes, but being more of a general studies major, I would do competitions. The competition was called NATS, National Association of Teachers of Singers. So I remember going to this competition and performing with people. It wasn't just my school, it was all the schools from the state, and it was a regional thing, so 3 states. So all of the different schools brought the singers that were studying voice, and they would compete against each other. And so the first time I went, I was a freshman man. So freshman men competed against each other, freshman women, junior men, so on and so forth. And I remember performing when I was 19 years old, and I made it to the finals, and I ended up winning. And so I thought, I won. I wasn't sure that this would be my career or even thinking, but I won, and I thought, okay, let me keep going, let me keep doing it. And the next year I went, and we had a competition, still an undecided major, more or less Bachelor of Arts, and I got 3rd place. And so I thought, oh, okay. But it made me want to go back. I went back to my teacher and said, next year I'm going to win this thing. And that was the beginning where I began to get serious about it. So I went back next year, and I won. But more than winning my category, which was junior men, they had an overall award that was for all the singers that came. So 300 or however many singers competed in the various categories. They had one top winner. And so they announced me as the top winner, and I said, okay, I think I know what I should be doing. And so it was from there that I began to think, okay, this is what I'm going to pursue as my career. And if it doesn't work out, I can always go back to law school. But I never went back, so.
So by some accounts, you were a rather shy young man.
I wouldn't call myself shy. Shy. No, I'm one of 6 kids.
Uh-huh.
I grew up in a very musical family. My father directed the choir at church. My mother sang as well. 3 older sisters who used to boss me around. And so I wasn't shy. I had to fight for myself. And that's probably why I wanted to be a lawyer, because I thought I have to defend myself. And I was really good at getting out of sticky situations because I had older sisters who would say, would try to dominate me. And I said, I'm smaller than you and younger than you, but I'm pretty clever. I wasn't shy, but, I was shy about singing, to be quite honest. I was shy about that.
So how does a performer, and I was a very shy performer in the beginning, how does one overcome that shyness?
I got a chance to be a part of a show choir, and we had a couple people that were the important singers of the group. I wasn't necessarily one of them, but as time went on, I guess my voice started to stick out, and people that, who were considered the more important singers, they became the lesser singers, and I used to take the opportunities to sing the important solos and to be more featured. But the fact that I had the opportunity to be a part of a group first, that built my confidence up, and that made me less shy, or how would you say, less nervous about being in front of people, and it became more natural because I was a part of a bigger thing, something that was bigger than myself.
And you said you performed at Disneyland. And,
I did.
And I think George Vassos also mentioned that you performed at Cedar Point, the
Yes,
famous amusement
I did,
park.
I
So
did.
does that actually factor into your relationship with the audience?
Well, it does, you know, and all of those things combined, of course. I'm a singer first, but also an instrumentalist, playing my instruments, but also a dancer. So more than anything, I think it's about being comfortable on stage, feeling that you can connect, feeling that you're in an environment that's normal or natural for you. So having those things, you know, collect all those things together makes it easier to be on stage and be comfortable. So, you know, I feel like I have pretty good carriage, pretty good movement because of my dance background, pretty good rhythm because of my instrumental background, and of course developing the singing over the years.
You made your Met debut in 2007
Yes.
alongside Joyce DiDonato. Does it matter to you the size of the audience for which you're performing? Are you equally strong or comfortable on stage if it's the Hollywood Bowl where you've also performed, or the Met, or for some school?
Again, going back to my show choir training, I have to mention that because it was the basis of what my foundation. Sometimes we would perform in rest stops where there were 3 people watching. Sometimes we would perform in homes for senior citizens where there were 12 people, you know, people coming in and out. Yes, we performed at the Berlin Wall where there were hundreds of thousands of people. And so for us, our teacher, she really instilled in us that you have to give the same performance every time because you never know who you'll touch. And so those 3 people are just as important as the 100,000 or however many people that are there. So I always think that you give your best wherever you are. It doesn't matter because you represent who you are as an artist every time you step out on stage.
So it wasn't a question of feeling any kind of intimidation the first time you stepped out with the Berlin Philharmonic and wanted to prove yourself. Did you feel like you had to prove yourself?
Well, I think I'm a firm believer in the fact that you are where you are for a reason. And so you don't feel like you have to prove yourself. I believe that you work hard and everything that you achieve is because of your hard work. So I felt like when I was singing with the Berlin Philharmonic, I think it was 2004, 2003, for the first time with Simon Rattle as the conductor, the famous, important, you know, of course, highly regarded Simon Rattle, I felt like I should be there because I had prepared myself, I had worked. I wasn't stepping out on stage thinking, I hope something happens, but I was confident that I could produce the thing that got me there in the first place. So that's always my approach, feeling like I belong, but I belong because I prepared myself and worked hard to be in that position.
Your father once told you, worry about the things that you can control. What
Yes.
did he mean by that?
You know, as I started out, obviously being an African-American singer, performer, not very tall, you know, there had not been a lot of people before me who looked like me that had been successful in classical music as a singer, as a male singer, as a tenor, oftentimes being the romantic interest. If you look at the African-American women, there are tons. Of course, Leontine
yes.
Price,
Grace
Martina
Bunbury,
Arroyo, Grace
yes.
Bunbury, Shirley Barrett, Kathleen Battle, who I just met the other day,
Oh.
Jesse Norman. There's so many, Barbara Hendricks,
Yes.
so many. And if you look at the men, there are a few. William Warfield, Paul Robeson, George Shirley.
What made it different for the men?
I don't know. I think especially being a tenor, you know, being the love, the romantic interest, probably that vision, you know, for people that appreciated classical music. It was for the upper echelon or the elite, you know, people that were probably more well-to-do, more well-off. And so it wasn't always a comfortable thing, I don't think, to see people of color opposite someone, you know, of a different race, especially if it was the man that was the person of color, you know, the dominant black man over someone who wasn't, of course, African-American or ethnic descent. So I don't think people were as comfortable. We've always had the talent, in my opinion. There have been many that I know of. Roland Hayes is another one. Vincent Cole is another one who's a friend and mentor of mine as well. Having those people who have been successful on some level, but there were not a lot. And so when my father said, worry about the things that you can control, you have the talent. You can control what you do. You can control how prepared you are, how much of a good colleague you are, your languages, how you are on stage. All of those things you have control over. You can't control the fact that you're short. You can put on heels, but you're still short. You're black. You can't control that. But giving people fewer things to not hire you for are the things you can control. For example, recently I lost probably about 20 pounds. That's something I can
Congratulations.
control. Thank you. But it wasn't by accident. It was by my hard work and turning down the plate. Even though I just left Paris, France, where they have all those croissants and cheese and tartare and everything that I love to eat and pommes frites, all those things. But for me, I always look at those things as an investment in my career. But going back to this idea that I'm worrying about the things that I can control. If I lose weight, it'll make me more comfortable on stage. It'll make me more agile on stage. Many times I sing the roles of young men, princes and counts and stuff like that. Well, a count is noble. If you weigh 300 pounds, I've never gotten up to that weight, but if you weigh more than you should, it's not going to make you as agile or as noble as you can be on stage. So that's one of the things that I can control, and other things like my languages and never being late, being a good colleague, being responsible. These are the things I can control, and I always try to worry about those things, and I worry less about what people say about the fact that, oh, he's a short guy. Well, yeah, I'm short. Oh, he's a black guy. Well, I'm black. But, I want to present a high level of artistry, so people want to hire me still.
I'm so curious about this question, and I include myself in this category. I'm always interested in how young performers who are minorities
Yes.
expect to get into the world of classical music and make a place for themselves. Did you have people along the way who were supportive or people who were not supportive? How did you deal with that, for example?
That's an interesting question. Of course, there have been many people who've been supportive, and not necessarily people of color. I had someone tell me early on that you just have to really know who you are, know what you have, know what you have to say. There will be naysayers, people who will say and try to hold you down because of something like your race. But if you believe in the talent that you have and that you should be there, some people say that you were born to sing, you just have to really go after it. But don't feel like it should be just given to you. Be hungry. I had my first voice teacher, my second one I should say, told me that you have to be better than just to be equal, and then you have to be special. So for me, I always felt like the minimum amount was just way too little to do. I had to do more, and then I had to do it with my own flair or my own toppings, or I don't know what you want to say, the way that I could make it my own to make it special so people could hear me and say, that is something that's unique. So, yeah, my race has been something that I've been very proud of. Of course, I can't control that. That's another thing, again, I can't control. But I always had that belief because people said, you just really have to know. You should be doing this. You should be singing. The world should hear your voice. And I was told that early on by different teachers who said, you just have something special that the world needs to hear. On the opposite side, there were people who thought that I wouldn't be successful. Many of those people were people of color. And I'm sure those people had obstacles. They were blocked. Even if they felt that they were talented enough to be singing on the world's important stages, for certain reasons they weren't. And at certain periods of time, it was more difficult for those people to be successful. But if you have this idea of half full, half empty, I always was a half full guy. And my father is someone that is incredibly important to me. He's not a philosopher, but he said a lot of things that have made a tremendous impression on my life. He always said, you have to look at it as half full, and you feel like you can do anything. He's a short guy like me. He's a black guy like me. And so to see him and the effect that he had on people, how many people respected him, looked up to him, that instilled in me something, a belief in myself that I would be successful. It's not arrogance at all, but it was just confidence more than anything else, because I saw the incredible man that he was at that time as a young kid I was. And so I just felt like, okay, if I believe in myself and work hard, like my father, I can be successful regardless of my race. So for those people who didn't believe in me, I didn't worry about them. But I just believed in myself more than anything and believed that I could be successful.
And you've navigated the world's major stages. Do you also believe that diversity is increasing in audiences? I was so happy to see yesterday at Charlie Parker,
Yes.
the Yardbird, that the audience seemed very diverse.
Yes. The thing I love about that, of course, I've gotten a chance to sing at the Metropolitan Opera many times, and the audience is probably a bit less diverse than it was at the Apollo Theater. But I am a firm believer that, you know, if you see people on stage that look like you, you'll be in the audience. I think everything in society is changing, hopefully. You know, I live in a very diverse neighborhood, and the people across the street, we have everything from Indian Americans, Asian Americans, Latino Americans, African Americans, Caucasian Americans, everything there. And my kids go to school with a very diverse group of kids as well. And so that's the world I want to live in. That's the world I think we are today. So when you see people in the theater that are mixed as far as like the ethnic makeup, that's the America that I hope will go to the theater, that it becomes less about, oh, there were 3 black people, but that people will come out and see things, and the people that are performing and the people that are producing and involved in these various performances. I think if the ethnic makeup is diverse, the audience will, you know, be a replica of that, a mirror image.
I was so struck when you were performing yesterday that you immediately found a zone, and you seemed to really be enjoying. What is that zone for you? What does it feel like? Are you aware of your audience?
You are aware of your audience, but when you try to inhabit a character like that, you have to really take the bull by the horns and give it a certain amount of energy so it's believable. The Apollo Theater is much different than the Metropolitan Opera. It's a further distance from the stage to the audience at the Metropolitan Opera as opposed to the Apollo Theater. At the Apollo Theater, the people are right up on you.
Yes.
And so there's a more intimate setting. And I feel there's a certain engagement that the artist, the performer, has to have, a certain believability that we must have in order to make it believable beyond the footlights. The interesting thing about playing a character like Charlie Parker, there is not a lot of video evidence of who he was. You can scour YouTube, and there are a few videos of him playing, but he's just sitting there. You don't see anything about his physicality, who he was as a person. Of course, I'm thinking he was a bit taller than me, but not a lot taller than me, maybe 5'9" or so. And so the way he was built, the way he played the saxophone, those things. I didn't play the saxophone, obviously, in the opera, but to try to build a character for him was difficult. So I felt like, okay, I have to inhabit it in my own way. And so to get into the zone, to have the connective tissue from these various scenes, to have something, a through line that can build a character that makes him believable. So if there was not a moment off, it was from going from one moment to the next, and there were no gaps in between. So for me, that has to be in the zone. That has to stay engaged. That has to be completely breathing and flexible and always trying to be engaged. So that's the zone that I was trying to find, because there are so many emotions that the character goes through. We showed pain. We tried to show pain. We tried to show joy, humor, defeat, of course, being intoxicated, under the influence of various things. So there's a lot for me that I had to pull from, or that I had to try to explore. And so it was just staying constant, staying present from the beginning until the last moment where the lights went out. So.
Is finding the zone in Charlie Parker different from finding the zone in a Rossini opera?
It is. As you saw yesterday, the opera was 90 minutes, and I was on stage about 84 of them.
Yes.
In these other operas, you have other people that can take the pressure. You have these moments to go off stage and recharge, and you have to, of course, make that voyage for example, when I do I Puritani, I'm on stage for the first act, and I don't come back for about an hour and a half. But I still have to show some type of connection to where I was, to where I am now. Charlie Parker, it's not chronological, and so you don't see, you don't understand the time, how it lines up for the most part. And so it's a bit different to try to keep that all engaged and stay in the zone, as opposed to an opera where you have other characters, other people that have arias and times on stage when you're not there.
Are you equally at home on the stage as you are in the recording studio? Is the
well,
process
thing is,
super different for you?
well, I think it is super different, and every discipline as an artist, you learn, how to get better at it. The first time I recorded was probably 13 years ago, doing a debut album many years ago, and for me that was the learning curve then was very steep, and I wasn't versed in how to record then. Since then, I've recorded many times, and I've learned the process of recording, which is much different than being on the opera stage. Perfection, for me, in any case, is never the goal. Of course, in a recording situation, it's probably more about perfection. But I always say it's not about being perfect, it's about being special. So I want to try to be special or do something, especially in the live performance, which is different. Every note doesn't have to be absolutely, I hope so, lined up is what I mean, but I hope I can do something that makes it memorable. In the recording studio, something that's there for posterity, something that's there for forever, where people can listen to it over and over again, time after time. The approach is different. You want to make sure that that high note that you sing has a certain amount of ringing quality or clean or clarity. You want to make sure that that can be as lined up and natural and the best thing that is preserved for the long term. But it's a different experience. All those things, and the recital stage as well.
With that expectation of perfection that comes with the digital recording age, if you brought that to the stage, that expectation, would that just be a pressure and an anxiety for a performer?
Well, I think it's a bit different because I think you're in the moment, and especially on the opera stage, the recital stage, you're living in what you have at that given time. So our instruments can be affected in many different ways. Sometimes you'll feel like you're connected to your voice, and other times you feel like you're not. Sometimes allergies may affect you, reflux, fatigue. You may be working with the pianist or an orchestra for the first time. There are so many variables that can affect your performance in the live setting that you have to be malleable. You have to be flexible to deal with what's happening at that moment. In the recording studio, you can pretty much say, okay, if I have to sing all of my high B flats, I want to sing them at 9:30 in the morning or 1 o'clock in the afternoon when I feel like I'm warmed up. And so that's going to give me the best opportunity to produce those things in a very focused way that you don't get in the live setting.
And you talk about feeling connected to your voice. What does that mean?
Connected to your voice. Someone said to me a long time ago that sometimes this is your voice and this is your technique. Sometimes your voice is just, you're tired. It's just not clicking the way you want to. The same thing could be said about athletes. A quarterback could say, I'm just off. I'm just overthrowing everyone or someone. I play tennis, so, my forehand is just off today. There's so many different things that can be off with the physical thing that is your body or your voice. This is your technique. And so the two of these meet. Sometimes you have to lean on your technique. Sometimes you can lean on your voice. Sometimes your technique is just things are not firing well. And so it's this marriage between the two. This is the perfect thing, but sometimes you have to lean on the other to give your best performance. And I think, being an artist at a high level, you understand when that is, and you adapt to whatever you're given that day.
What is the traveling like? What is the traveling life like? I understand that from my own experience, that it can be very lonely. What is the opera community like? Is it a close-knit community? Can you hang out with friends?
It is.
Do you recognize familiar faces in the audience?
Oh my gosh, yeah. Well, at a certain point, I've been in the career about 16 years or so full-time, and so you return to places more than anything. And so you know people in the city, places. Sometimes you go to a restaurant, even if you haven't been there for 2 years, you'll go and you'll see the owner and say, hey, how you doing? At these various places around the world, close to the theaters. Yes, my colleagues and I, we're friends that when we get into a place, for example, if it's Munich, if it's Paris, we haven't seen each other for 3 years, we say. We get there and we're all there temporarily. We all don't have roots down in that city. So oftentimes we will go to eat dinner, we'll go to museums, and we'll do things that are more social things with each other so we don't have to live the lonely life that can be that of an opera singer or a performer, actor, politician. And so we become more of a close-knit, tight-knit community. But I will say this too, for me, one of the things I try to do is to have other hobbies and interests outside of what I do as a singer. And so one of the things, people laugh about this, but one of the things that I do is I love to dance salsa. So I do Latin dancing. For me, that has been one of the best finds because that is a completely different community of friends and people around the world that I can connect with. So I'm going to Zurich in about a month from now, and I already know I have probably 15 friends in Zurich that also go outside of the salsa venues that we go dancing, because they'll say, hey, let's go to eat something, or let's go, my friend's doing a play here, or I'm going to go to Luxembourg for the day, do you want to come? And those people have become family and friends for me, so it makes life on the road a lot more bearable because you're not by yourself all the time. And so that's been a great community outside of the opera world. And
So the camaraderie of that life that you describe
Yes.
probably offsets any sense of competitiveness that you would have felt growing up, trying to make your way in the field. Did you ever feel a pressure to outdo your peers?
Well, I think if everybody's bringing their best, it's more about doing your best rather than beating someone else. Because there's some people who have strengths that are better than yours in different areas. You have to know who you are and know what your strengths are. I always say, I do master classes a lot now, and I tell people it's about showing your strengths, not your weaknesses. So for me as an artist, if I do my best, it's not about me beating someone else. It's about me being my best that I possibly can be. Of course, it's a competitive field because for the jobs, or lack of jobs, I should say, people want them. People want to be able to perform on these stages and be able to make a living to provide for their family. And so there is a certain amount of competition. But for me, I'm not competing with anyone. And especially at a certain level, you understand I have a great deal of respect for my colleagues who are tremendous artists, and that inspires me to go and to do the best that I can do for me. So being able to do that takes all the competitiveness out of it, and it's just focusing more on myself than other people.
How do you know when you've reached your own personal artistic maturity? Is there a moment, or is that a process of awareness?
It's a process, and more than anything, seeing people like Placido Domingo, who I've seen over the years, and I've gotten a chance to know him pretty well, and people like Joyce DiDonato, who's a good friend of mine, Alessandro Corbelli, these people who've been in the business for years and years and years. And you see these people who continue to search for things. Again, this idea, the goal is perfection, but you never reach there. But part of that is also you trying to discover other things about the role, about the music, about your mastery of your instrument, about having a believable character from beginning to end of this opera, or to do something that's more dramatically appealing than it had been before. I've done the Barbara Seville in I don't know how many different productions of that. But every time I get on stage, I just had recently did it in Paris, and it was probably one of the most successful ones. But I'm not done. So the next time I do it, I want to try to find other things that I can build off of that we had on the most recent performances.
Lawrence, do you like other types of music?
I do, many types. If you look at my iPod today, I have everything from Steely Dan, to Chicago, Peter Cetera, some Beyonce, but not much. My wife likes that more than I do. Take Six, I love vocal jazz. The Real Group is a jazz group. Manhattan Transfer, everything from hardcore gospel, just regular jazz. Miles Davis. When I was in college, it was cool to listen to Miles Davis. So everything. I mean, I appreciate a lot of different types of music. It's not just classical. On a given day, I mean, I may be listening to Fritz Wunderlich sing a song cycle, but the next day I could be listening to an artist like, I don't know, Kirk Franklin or James Hall, which is, serious gospel, to anything from, I don't know, Jamiroquai. There's tons of stuff that I like to listen to. So I don't like to put myself in a box as far as like, yes, I'm a classical singer, but I appreciate many other styles of music.
What's the best part about being a singer?
I have this thing that I'm on right now. It's called 50 by 50, and that's 50 countries by the age of 50. And so I've already gotten to 40. I'm 43 years old. And it's for me traveling and meeting people, trying new foods, seeing some of these historic sites, some of these important venues, experiencing different cultures, learning different languages. This is fun for me. So traveling and sharing with people of different, backgrounds and histories in these historic places is probably the most important and fun thing for me as a singer.
A lot of my singer friends are particularly sensitive with regards to their instrument, and they always have to take care of what they eat or how they
Yes.
travel, the quality of the air. Are these very neurotic concerns of yours?
They are, for many singers. Myself, no. I have friends that, I won't mention who, but I have friends that have a large bag of products from the pharmacy that they have backstage every show. And they are putting creams in their nose and sprays and taking lozenges and doing all kinds of stuff and certain wraps. I mean, just a bag full of things. For me, I go with water and I just go on stage. But that's just my approach to everything. I think that is mental. And I think, people do things, whatever works for you. And I'm much different than my other colleagues. And perhaps that they need that to make them go out and do the best and on stage that they can do. But for me, this is not something that's bigger than me. I have a great deal of respect for what it is that I do, but I just try to do it in a very natural way that I don't get too caught up in my head with all these outside things that could potentially ruin a performance.
Let's talk about the moment when you're backstage before a big role in a large opera. What's going through your mind?
Honestly, when I get on stage before a performance, I feel like I'm ready. I want to make myself ready by the time, it's opening night. So I'm not like worried about, oh gosh, I hope I remember the staging or the words or any of that stuff. Not that I'm on autopilot, but I'm pretty confident in my preparation for that. So if it's any time from September to December, I'm probably thinking about fantasy football. My fantasy football scores or something like that. One of my hobbies is fantasy football. I'm crazy about it. And I do 4 leagues every year. So I always like to, when I started, I have to say this, many years ago when I started, I always felt like I wanted to make it a very natural thing, being on stage. So what I began to do is to engage some of my colleagues, some of the technicians or someone with costumes or someone on the chorus, anyone that's backstage, just to kind of take the pressure off of going on stage. I'm not sitting there thinking 3, 2, 1 on stage. The minute I might be walking on stage, I may say, who do you think who should I start today against the Denver Broncos? My Steelers are playing this person. Do you think this guy will get 3 touchdowns or not? And then I walk on stage and then do my job. So I try to deflect it, try to get the pressure off of my performance by just being a normal guy. The truth of the matter is I walk out on stage many times, walk out of the theater, and a lot of people don't know that I'm an opera singer. So I'm just a regular guy who happens to do something that's fun, that's different than the normal, maybe 9 to 5 job, perhaps. But I don't lose sight of who I am as a person, so I just try to have that attitude in my life and in my performance, that what I do is on stage and I try to do my best, but I'm just a regular lunchbox, put on my hard hat and go to work. That's my attitude.
I think what a lot of people don't realize in the life of an artist, artists who don't have a structured daily 9 to 5 job, the responsibility of having a work ethic is not always very easy. What is the daily work of a singer?
It depends where you are. It depends what you have coming up. I just recently did a recital, and I wish I had more time to prepare that recital, because those things come up on you pretty fast, especially when you have many other things and many other projects coming up. And in the middle of that, life happens. I'm a father of 2 kids and a husband, so when I say, okay, I have 2 weeks at home before I have this recital, well, if my kids are sick, that's probably going to cut down on the days. If I have a dentist appointment, that's going to cut down on some of the days that I can rehearse or prepare myself for that recital. Or my wife says, let's go and do 20 miles on the trail. We do cycling. That's going to cut down, on the amount of performance. So knowing yourself, knowing your ability to prepare, and to kind of like set it in stages, and so it's not a whole bunch at once, but it's over a period of time that you can kind of prepare yourself. So that's the daily life of an opera singer, taking a little bit of time every day to do something towards your, being prepared. So that's how I look at it, because I think I know myself pretty well and know what I need in order to be ready to walk out on stage confidently, because I'm prepared.
You've prepared many roles and have had a lot of experience learning. If you could give advice to young musicians, knowing what you know now, that you wish you could have known from the beginning, what would you tell them about learning the role?
Learning the role is really just saturate yourself with the role. When I was a young student, I had teachers who said, don't learn the role by listening to it, by listening to CDs. I think, I take a different approach with that. I think you should listen to it, because I think what it does is inform how you prepare. You know the traditions, you know the tempos, some of the performance practices. You have a sense of the style. You know what's going on. And so when you take it to your coach, and you have to have to dot the I's and cross the T's of it to make sure that that 16th note is a 16th note, the half note is tied, or you know all those things, but you have it in your head where you're going, the direction you want to arrive to. So make sure you saturate yourself. Listen to it over and over again. Go to YouTube. YouTube is a tremendous resource where people can hear the greats who were, noteworthy in these roles. Pavarotti, if he sang these art songs, listen to him. But not only him, put the title of that art song in and listen to 10 different people. Some students do it, some professionals, super professionals, and everything in between. And so there's no reason you can't be as prepared as possible, because you really understand and know the piece. But live with it. Know yourself. Know how much time it takes you to prepare those things, and I think that's going to be helpful for you, so that when you are ready to step on stage, you feel as confident as possible.
Lawrence, thank you so much for all of your time today.
My
You're
pleasure.
brilliant. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank
Okay.
you.
It was fun.
Yes.